It was one of those moments that seemed to stretch forever. One of those times when you think, I should have seen this coming, but no, I didn't. I wasn't paying attention. And then everything changed in an instant. It started off as a casual day. She had come over to my place like usual. We were just hanging out, nothing special, just another Sunday. I'd been feeling off lately, but I couldn't figure out why. It wasn't anything too glaring, just a sense that something wasn't quite right. But I didn't want to overthink it. I mean, things had been good with us. At least, that's what I convinced myself. She was in the kitchen, and I was lounging in the living room, scrolling through my phone, trying to unwind. My laptop was sitting open on the coffee table, just left there in its usual state. I'd been working from home lately, and it was cluttered with stuff, papers, old coffee cups, random files I hadn't sorted through. That's when it happened. I got a notification. Not on my phone, but on my laptop. A strange little ping. I hadn't seen anything like it before. It was just a random app one had installed some time ago to monitor my Wi-Fi connections, make sure nothing weird was going on with my internet speed. Nothing alarming. But today it was. There was a device on my network that shouldn't have been there. A familiar device. Her phone. My heart dropped into my stomach. It wasn't just any device, it was her phone. And I knew something was off, so without thinking, I opened up the app and clicked on her device's connection. I should have just ignored it, should have pretended I didn't see it, but my curiosity got the best of me. A glimpse of her screen flashed, and there it was. Open. Unlocked. Tinder. What the hell? I felt the weight of it crash down on me. I knew what I was seeing, but it was still hard to wrap my head around. It wasn't that she had a Tinder account, that was whatever. People do things, they make choices. But to be logged into my Wi-Fi while she was using it? That made it real. This wasn't some accidental swipe or casual flirtation. This was intentional. She wasn't just talking to someone. She was actively looking for something else. And she was doing it while sitting in my living room. I froze. My mind was a blur, trying to process what I was seeing. But then, without missing a beat, I closed the laptop, shoved it back on the table, and walked into the kitchen like nothing was wrong. She looked up when I entered. "What's up?" she asked, just a little too casually. The same way she always did when I walked into a room. I don't even know why I did it, but I just asked. "How's Tinder going for you these days?" Her eyes went wide for a split second, just long enough for me to notice. But then, just as quickly she blinked, gave me one of those forced smiles, and said, "What? It's not that deep." I tried not to react. I wanted to scream, wanted to throw it in her face, but I didn't. I just stood there for a second, my pulse racing, trying to keep my cool. I didn't want to be the guy who blew up over something like this. But how could I not? She was sitting there, telling me it's not that deep, while I was staring at proof that she had been using my internet to line up another guy. The way she said it, like it was no big deal, like I was overreacting. It burned. And the worst part was, I almost started to doubt myself. She was good at that. Her ability to make me feel like I was crazy, like I was the one who didn't understand the situation, it was something she had perfected. It was like she could warp reality just enough to make me question everything. I didn't know what to do. I should have walked away right then. But I couldn't. I couldn't just let it go. So I pressed. "Really? Because it seems pretty deep to me. You've been logged into my Wi-Fi for how long, and this whole time, you've been swiping on other guys?" Her face went blank, like she wasn't hearing me. "Don't make a big deal out of it," she said, her voice going cold. "I was just bored. We're fine, okay? It's just not that deep." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to tell her that it was exactly that deep, but I held back. This wasn't some silly argument about me being possessive or paranoid. This was different. This was the thing I had been ignoring, the thing that had been building up for weeks. The way she would always do just enough to keep me around, but never enough to make me feel secure. It wasn't just the Tinder. It was the whole game. The passive-aggressive comments. The way she'd flirt with other people, but then act like it was nothing. How she'd act like she cared, but only when it suited her. She kept me around like a safety net, like I was just someone she could fall back on when everything else fell through. But when things were good, she didn't need me. And that was the worst part. She was always in control, and I was too blind to see it. I should have been enough. But in her eyes, I was just another option. And the worst part? I wasn't even the best option. I stayed silent for a while, just staring at her. She started to fidget, clearly uncomfortable with the silence. But I didn't care anymore. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. I wasn't going to apologize for calling her out. And then, just as casually as she'd brushed it off, she stood up and said, "Look, I'm going out. I'll talk to you later." I wanted to say something to stop her, but I didn't. I watched her grab her purse, walk out the door, and leave me standing there, stunned, not knowing what the hell had just happened. It was the same thing over and over again. This dance where she pulled away just enough to make me chase, just enough to make me question myself. She didn't even care. It wasn't deep for her, so why should it be deep for me? I was the one who was losing my mind over this. I was the one who was still trying to figure out what was real, what mattered. And it didn't hit me right then, but it did later. It was over. When she came back, I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. I'd gotten the answer I needed. I knew who she really was now. She could keep playing her games, keep acting like everything was fine. But I wasn't the guy she wanted. And I wasn't the guy she was going to use anymore. It wasn't deep for her. But it was deep for me. And that's the thing. When you realize that the other person isn't on the same page, that's when you know it's time to move on. That's when you know you've already lost. The game was rigged from the start. And it wasn't even about me anymore. It was about her, her need to control everything, her need to keep things just deep enough to keep me around, but never deep enough to let me in. And as much as it hurt to admit, I was finally done. When she came back, I was already gone. Not physically, but emotionally. I didn't pack up my things or leave the apartment, but I'd mentally checked out, and I wasn't going to pretend otherwise. The air between us was suffocating with the silence. She must have known. She had to. But I didn't care anymore. She'd made it clear what she thought of me, what she thought of us. Her return didn't bring with it the comfort or reassurance I had hoped for. Instead, it felt more like a formality, like she was just going through the motions, pretending like everything was fine. She had walked out with that same casual air, like she was untouchable, like I was the one who was supposed to wait around, to keep things normal. But the thing about being treated like an option is that eventually, you realize you're not just an option, you're nothing. Not even a consideration. When she walked in through the door, her first words were, "Can we just talk? I think you're overreacting." Overreacting. It was always the same. I could feel the irritation creeping up on me, the anger and frustration that had been building since the moment I saw her on Tinder. Every time I tried to confront her, she just brushed it off. Every time I wanted to talk about us, it was not that deep. Every single time I voiced any concern, it was dismissed like it was nothing. But for me, it was deep. So deep, I couldn't breathe when I thought about it anymore. "Overreacting?" I asked, my voice low and calm, too calm, because deep down, I could feel the storm inside me just waiting to break. "You expect me to believe that? You expect me to believe that you're sitting here, logged into my Wi-Fi, swiping through other guys on Tinder, and that's not deep?" Her expression faltered for just a moment. But then she quickly recovered, shrugging like she didn't have to justify anything. "It's just a little fun. Everyone does it. It's not a big deal. Why are you making this such a huge thing?" Every word she said felt like a slap in the face. "It's not a big deal." That's what she kept repeating, over and over, as though she could somehow convince me, as though she could erase the reality of what she had done. But I wasn't going to be gaslit. I wasn't going to let her turn it around on me. Not this time. No. It's a huge deal, I said, my voice rising now. And don't tell me it's not. I'm not stupid, and I'm not your backup plan anymore. If I was ever even that. I'm done with the games, done with the constant disrespect. You didn't just use me. You used me to fill some gap you weren't ready to face. She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't let her. No, I said, holding up a hand. I'm done. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep living in a relationship where I'm the last person you think of. Where I'm constantly left wondering if you even care, if you're even all in. This isn't love. This is manipulation. I turned my back to her, because I couldn't look at her face any longer. The face that had once been comforting, once been mine. But now, it felt like a stranger's. I didn't need to see the fake apology, the empty regret. I didn't need the tears she might pull out to try to make me feel guilty. It didn't matter. It wouldn't change anything. Stop, she said, her voice suddenly small. I could hear the tremor in her voice. Maybe she realized for the first time that I wasn't just some guy she could walk all over, some guy she could string along for her own convenience. But it was too late. The damage was already done. You're right, she continued, her voice quieter now, almost defeated. I've been selfish. I haven't been fair to you. I should have told you what I was thinking. I didn't want to hurt you. The irony hit me hard. She didn't want to hurt me, yet everything she'd done had been a punch to the gut. Her selfishness, her inability to see me for who I was, her lack of consideration, it all hurt worse than anything else she could have done. I'm not asking for your forgiveness anymore, I said, turning back to face her, my heart a little emptier now, but stronger for it. I've learned something today. I've learned that I can't keep waiting around for someone who doesn't appreciate me. I'm not going to beg you to stay or to choose me. I'm done being your second choice. I wanted to say more, but what was the point? She was never going to change. She was never going to see me as anything other than a fallback. I was just a person to fill the void when it suited her. But I couldn't be that person anymore. I grabbed my keys, my jacket, and headed for the door. She didn't stop me. She didn't even move. It was like she knew, deep down, that this was it. That the door was closing, and I wasn't going to come back. I couldn't. Where are you going? She asked softly. Does it matter? I asked, not looking back. I'm leaving. I'm done. And that was the last time I heard from her. After that, there were no apologies, no late-night phone calls begging me to come back. There was nothing. And for the first time, I felt like I had done the right thing. I had walked away from a relationship that wasn't healthy, that was only ever going to drain me. In the days that followed, I found clarity. I realized just how much I had been ignoring, how much I had been excusing, simply because I didn't want to face the reality. She wasn't the person I thought she was. She wasn't the person I needed her to be. It wasn't until after she left my life that I could finally breathe again. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about me, reclaiming my peace. And that was all that mattered. I was done, and I wasn't going to let anyone, especially her, make me question it. The hardest part wasn't leaving her. The hardest part was realizing I deserved more than that. And the moment I did, I knew I would never settle for less again. It wasn't that deep for her. But it was for me. And in the end, that made all the difference. The days after I left her were the most peaceful I had felt in months, maybe even years. At first, I wasn't sure what to do with myself. I had spent so much time chasing her, making excuses for her, rearranging my life to fit into her world. Now, with all that gone, there was this strange, overwhelming sense of freedom. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. A part of me was still stuck, holding on to the person I thought she was, the one I had built up in my mind. It wasn't about her, though. It was about me. About the version of myself I had let slip away in the process of trying to make the relationship work. I spent the first week just trying to get my bearings, keeping to myself, figuring out what came next. I didn't talk to anyone about it, not my friends, not my family. I kept everything internal. I knew deep down I needed to heal on my own, without anyone else's influence. I didn't want to hear the "I told you so" s or the "You deserve better" s. I had to figure it out for myself. It wasn't until I ran into one of my old friends, Jake, that I started to realize just how much I had changed. We had a drink at the local bar one night, and the first thing he said to me was, "Damn man, you look different." I had known Jake for years. He was one of those friends who saw me at my best and my worst, but he had always been real with me, and I respected that. So when he said that, it made me pause. "Different how?" I asked, not sure I was ready to hear the answer. He leaned back in his chair, taking a swig of his beer. "You seem lighter. More at ease. Like you've finally let go of something." "I don't know, man. It's hard to explain." I didn't know how to respond. I hadn't realized just how much tension I had been carrying. It wasn't just about her. It was about everything I had let slide, everything I had ignored in my own life. For so long, I had lived in this bubble, bending to her will, making her my focus. I had lost myself in the process. But now here I was, without her, without the stress. And somehow, it felt like I was finally seeing myself again. "I guess I've been through some shit lately," I said, more to myself than to him. "It's been a wake-up call. I didn't realize how deep I was in it until I got out." Jake nodded, not pressing me for more, but his expression softened. "Man, I get it. Relationships can do that to you. They can suck the life out of you if you let them. I'm just glad you're starting to get it back." I didn't know what to say. I wasn't ready to explain everything, not yet. But what he said stuck with me. I had been letting my life revolve around someone else for so long that I had forgotten how to be me. It wasn't just her. It was me. I had put up with so much, excused so much, because I thought it was part of love. But it wasn't. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't love. It was around that time that I started to rebuild. I started going back to the things I used to enjoy before she came into the picture. I picked up old hobbies I had abandoned, called friends I hadn't spoken to in ages. I spent more time with my family, not feeling guilty about putting myself first for once. I started reading books that weren't about fixing relationships or self-help nonsense. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since before we even met. I began to rediscover who I was when I wasn't someone's partner. But then, the messages started coming. At first, it was just a few missed texts from her. Short, empty apologies that didn't say much, just enough to make me feel like she was trying to do damage control. Then came the phone calls, the ones I didn't answer, the voicemails where she tried to convince me that we could work it out. I heard her voice, shaky and uncertain, but I didn't give in. I didn't pick up. The hardest part wasn't that she was reaching out. It was the part of me that still wanted to believe in what we had. There were moments when I wondered if I had been too harsh, if I had thrown it all away too soon. But then I remembered the nights I spent wondering if I was enough. I remembered the little ways she dismissed my feelings, the times she gaslit me into thinking I was the one who was wrong. And I remembered how she had just walked out when things got real, when I finally confronted her. And that's when it hit me again, the realization that I didn't need her. I had been trying to convince myself that I couldn't live without her, but the truth was, I was better off. I was free. But it wasn't easy. I still had moments when I missed her. I missed the good times, the laughter, the way she made me feel special. But I knew that wasn't the whole picture. The bad times, the manipulation, the inconsistency, the emotional games, those were the things I had to leave behind. I didn't block her number. I didn't want to give her that satisfaction. I wasn't angry anymore. I was indifferent. And that indifference, that power of not caring anymore, was the final step in my healing. Months went by, and I got stronger. I met new people, went on dates, and learned to enjoy my own company again. I stopped looking over my shoulder for her, stopped waiting for the phone to ring, stopped wondering if she was coming back. It wasn't that I didn't care. It was that I no longer needed her to complete me. Eventually, I did hear from her again, but by that time, it didn't matter. She sent one last message. A long one, full of apologies and pleas, trying to make sense of what had happened, trying to convince me that she had changed. But I didn't respond. Because I didn't need closure from her. I had found my own. And that's when I realized that the real journey wasn't about her. It was about me. It was about finding myself again, about becoming someone I could be proud of, someone who didn't need someone else's validation to feel worthy. I had learned the most important lesson, that I could stand on my own, that I didn't need to be anyone's second choice, that I wasn't someone's backup plan. I had moved on. And I was finally okay with it. I was no longer the guy who had been lost in her world, no longer the one scrambling to fix something that was never meant to be fixed. I was the guy who learned how to let go. And that, more than anything, was the real victory.